Hi, I'm Mark Anthony Tierno, author of Maldine, Cyberdawn, Inspector Flatfoot, Land of the Hive, and I'm here with another writing tip. Today's writing tip is about time travel in a story. Now, that's one of those things that's great as a concept, but too often ends up a horrible mess in execution. Be it books, movies, TV, way too often the author or scriptwriter thinks that the phrase "it's time travel, who can understand it?" or "temporal physics gives me a headache" is all they need to explain things. That latter line of which was used in an actual episode of a certain television program. Um, but time travel, like all things, must have its own consistent logic, self-consistent logic. All one has to remember is that the rules of cause and effect still hold sway. It's just you have to think in a more of a four-dimensional manner. An event in the future can still be the cause of something in the past via a trip through time, as long as you keep track of the sequence of cause and effects and what started what, even if it is more behind-the-scenes stuff that doesn't explicitly make it in the story. There must be enough there in the story that an intelligent reader can derive by inference what probably happened. A perfect example is the much abused time loop, whereby someone in the future creates a situation in the past which leads to events that make it possible for him to go back to the future to get to where he was before he traveled back in time. Problem here is that most of the time this is a closed loop. There's no entry point that could have started the whole mess off. There has to be like some initial iteration where the character or the situation would have gotten, more or less to that point without the temporal intervention. And like when it gets to the point when things are really bad, good guys lost, whatever, and then comes the temporal intervention, we go back, try to make it better. So it has to be that initial entry point. A specific example was for an episode from an actual science fiction TV show, and why that the words time travel and Star Trek Voyager in the same sentence make me cringe. They were traveling through space, ship was passing by a solar system, briefly scanned it, and they were about to move on before the whole star system exploded. Naturally, they went to investigate, got caught up in something that threw them back in time just enough to be the cause of that world's explosion. Only by realizing the loop and deciding to tell their present selves to pass up the system entirely does the loop break and the world doesn't explode. Problem here is that the ship was about to pass up the world in the first place, so none of that stuff would have ever happened. There was no logical initial set of circumstances. Or the Terminator films. The machines created time travel, or a time machine to stop our hero John Connor from being born, and that is how the kid's father was able to go back in time so he would be born. If they hadn't built the machine, then the hero would never have been born, and the machines would have won. They never would have had a reason to have built the time machine at all. So there's a loop here, but in no way that it could have happened. Okay, so how do I make it work? First, look upon each cycle of the time loop as an iteration. The first iteration is the original cause. It's the one that has to lead to all the others, which can then close the loop. Again, use Terminator as an example, because it is quite salvageable, unlike certain other episode shows. Suppose the first iteration was the humans had secretly developed a time machine, so that they could send someone back to stop the machines from rising up and killing off humanity. The machines were closing in on the humans' last holdout, save for one guy that leaped through the portals. All humans are killed, save the one who got away, so the machines send back a Terminator through the same machine to stop him. The guy fathers a kid with someone who then stops the Terminator, but not before he himself is killed. Kid grows up, becomes John Connor, with foreknowledge of the machines, and now it is the machines who instead build a time machine to go back and stop the humans, and thus her time loop is closed. That's one possibility there. Um, you just have to remember, even in the extra dimension of time, you have cause and effect. You just have to think in a nonlinear fashion and in more than just 3 dimensions. You just have to remember that at some point, either from a sequence of events or an outside, I mean, excuse me, that that temporal loops need a way at some point, to have that initial starting condition, either by sequencing events with some outside force to influence things. You can't simply wave your hands and say it's time travel who understands it. You have picture like a circle. First iteration gets you to where um, everything was a disaster, whatever it is that needed saving, all but the one person, got killed. And then somehow he manages on his own some sort of temporal intervention. That makes it possible for him to go back in time to say, okay, let's see if we can win it, but this time save about 1 billion lives or so. And that begins the closed loop of how at some point then someone has to go back in time to keep that same timeline. You just have to be careful. So there are too many in fact, of the assorted time travel TV episodes and movies and stuff, there's maybe like 5% of them that work. So as a writer, even if it's something that doesn't explicitly appear in the story, have your notes down about those iterations and how the first one would have gotten started. Even if it doesn't appear explicitly in the story, if it's hinted at least you have your loop mapped out and your time travel story works. That's today's tip. Keep on reading.